What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. As you can see, I've got this big giant mango tree in front of me, and we're going to be putting that in the ground today. Right about where I'm standing in front of this coconut tree behind me, Carrie and I just got back from the nursery and we picked up a bunch of really cool trees, one of them being this mango, but we also got a wahilote tree, we've got a papaya tree, we also got this really cool cactus, and as an added bonus, and pure generosity from the owner of this nursery, he threw in this beautiful orange jasmine plant for free, and we're so grateful for that. But for now, we got this big, beautiful mango tree that's sitting right in front of me. I've got everything set up. I've got my umbrella over here because it's a really hot day. I'm gonna open that up so I can dig this hole under some shade. We got our wheelbarrow, and of course, the beautiful mango tree. So let's get that in the ground and let's get started.
First, I started by removing the grass from the location I selected to plant this tree. Once I felt like I cleared away enough grass, I began digging the hole. My general principle when planting a tree is to remove roughly about double the volume of soil that you need to fit the root ball of your tree. I laid down the cardboard box and dumped the soil on top of it. I'll be using this soil later to backfill the hole once the tree is in, and the cardboard box is just to make it easier to clean up once I'm done. About 90% of the soil I'm going to be using is native soil. In my experience, I find using native soil is just much healthier for the tree in the long run. Using potting soil and other fancy gimmicks might sound good at first, but when you do that, you're basically just putting your tree in a pot in the ground. Eventually, the roots will grow past the potting soil that you've placed, and once they hit your native soil, they're going to be shocked. So for this tree, I'm going to be using my native soil. I'm just going to break it up a bit. As I continued digging, I started to notice the soil was quite rocky. So I started to remove some of the larger rocks and separated them from my soil pile. Eventually, I realized the rock issue was a bit bigger than I initially thought. Quite literally, a lot bigger. It turns out I was digging on top of a boulder, so I tried to break it apart with a pickaxe. I've come across a few larger rocks in my backyard before. Typically I was able to break them up with a pickaxe, but this one was not budging. After about 10 to 15 minutes of chipping away at this boulder, I realized this thing wasn't going to move. At this point, I really wasn't sure what to do, and sometimes it's best just not to fight with nature, because maybe this was a sign. I contemplated shifting gears and possibly moving the spot altogether for this mango tree. But then again, I really like this spot. I made a run to Home Depot and rented this jackhammer. It was definitely getting the job done. I never used a jackhammer before, so it was a fun experience to learn how to use this new tool. I pulled out all the rocks that I broke up and threw them into a separate pile to be discarded later. Now that the hole was done, it was time to get it ready for the tree. The first step was to get it to the right depth, roughly level, and slightly compacted. So I added more soil and lightly added pressure with my feet. I'm compacting it so the tree won't sink down too far over time. Next, I measured the height of the root ball. The pot was about 20 inches off the ground, and the distance between the top of the root ball and the top of the pot was 3 inches. Which means the root ball is 17 inches tall. The hole that I dug out was about 15.5 inches deep which was pretty good, but I wanted the tree to sit slightly higher than ground level. And considering it would likely sink over time, I decided to add a bit more soil. So I added more soil and lightly compacted it. I checked my new depth and it looks like I added an inch. So we're now at 14.5 inches deep, which is pretty good. Now that we have a good depth for the lightly compacted soil, it's time to add some looser soil. The goal here is to add the soil layers in different densities to help the tree get used to the native soil. It will first come in contact with loose soil, then lightly compacted soil, and lastly, the native soil, which is pretty compacted. This process should help the roots get acclimated to my native soil with very little resistance at first. Next, I checked to make sure the bottom was roughly level, and surprisingly, it was pretty spot on. Now it's time to get the tree in the ground. If you're doing something like this yourself, like I am, I find it best to almost lay it down sideways when you pull it out of the pot. To get it in the ground, you want to somewhat lay it down like you did when you were getting out of the pot, and then gently roll it / twist it into the hole. Now that it's in the ground, I want to position it to allow for the best airflow and sunlight. It's time to backfill. Again, I'm using that native soil that I saved. And once it's all backfilled, I lightly compact the soil and make sure it's in there pretty good. This is to help support the tree while it's taking root over the next few months. Next, I'm adding a top layer of compost to help provide the tree with some vital nutrients. I added some native soil and some perlite to the compost, and I blended it all together in my wheelbarrow. This, again, will help blend it in with the native soil, and hopefully not be too shocking to the tree. The sun was going down at this point, and the mosquitoes started coming out, so I had to call it quits for the day. I gave it a heavy watering to help settle the soil and get rid of any large air pockets that may have formed during the backfilling process. The next morning, I added a few bags of topsoil that I got from Home Depot. It looks like the ducks wanted to help with this process. Lastly, it was time to add some mulch. I'm using grass clippings from our yard that I dried out for a few days. Here in Southwest Florida we have Bermuda grass, and this stuff works incredibly as mulch. It keeps all the weeds away, it helps retain moisture, and most importantly, it's free and abundant. As I lay down the mulch, I'm careful not to cover the crown, which is the part of the roots that meets the trunk. This part right here, where the roots are sticking out of the ground. It's important not to cover this because it needs access to oxygen. And there you have it. Now we have successfully planted this mango tree. We hope to soon enjoy some delicious mangoes from this tree, and I'll be sure to make a video once it starts fruiting, which should be in January or February. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and if you did, please consider hitting the like button and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us out.